Hi guys, we're going to show you something kind of new. Okay, so Enna, I'm going to try to hold this as still as I can. Okay, wiggle. Did you guys see that? That is something crazy. This is new. Do you see this muscle? Wiggle. Wiggle it again, Nana. It's like a little heartbeat. Oh my gosh, Nana. See that? That is something she never had before. And this, wiggle again. Oh my gosh, do you see that? Like, that is something she hasn't done. Wiggle again. She never did that before. And it's like, I know it's weird. It's a little movement, but that is so cool. I don't know, I haven't tested out her other leg. We were doing stretches and stuff, and then all of a sudden I noticed she did this. So, wow. Hey, Enna. So she just had Speranza treatment last week, but that was kind of cool. So that's a new movement, guys. Hi guys, it's Lisa here, and I'm back again. Sometimes it'll be Hugo, sometimes it'll be myself. I hope you enjoyed the little clip with Enna. Enna is our oldest daughter together, and she tonight actually was doing her exercises, and all of a sudden I noticed she's kind of wiggling her leg a little bit. So I did video clip that, and it was really kind of fascinating. At first I was like, am I seeing things or whatever? But anyways, yeah, it was really fascinating. So Enna started losing a lot of her movement. She has spinal muscular atrophy, and she's a type 1, and yes, there is various types. I think it's 1 out of 4 people that are a carrier to spinal muscular atrophy. And basically, Hugo and I happen to be a carrier, and him being across Canada and me being across the other side of Canada, happened to meet each other, and never hearing of spinal muscular atrophy at all. No education. It's never been, we didn't hear about it then. So neither one of us had testing or genetic testing, and all of a sudden here we made a baby with spinal muscular atrophy, and she is type 1, and there's various types all the way to adult onset. There are like very small, like I guess they call it SMARDs or something like that. So it goes all the way. It's a lot of detail to go into for myself. I'm exhausted, I'm tired, and I could go on and explain all this. So basically, in simple terms, she's missing a copy of her SMN1 gene, which basically will send the signal to the brain to feed protein to the muscles. So then the muscles are just like, oh, we just got to keep eating. So then basically the muscles waste away, or whatever, the protein keeps eating the muscles or whatever. Sorry, I'm so tired. But sorry, it's been a long day. We did a lot of work today. We did a lot of moving stuff around, moved a lot of my mom's things out of the old office that I had, and redoing my office again, so that we can have, like, it was completely messy. Yes, we have the canvases. We'll be moving them into a different area, and so it kind of, there's my baby bonsai. I have a baby bonsai, by the way. I'm not sure if that's normal for it to do that. It's starting to get a big stem on it, and it was just a big hairy bush coming out of my other big bonsai, which I have, and it was just weird. I was like, what the heck is this coming out of my bonsai? And I guess my bonsai made a baby, and I ended up having, baby bonsai. Oh, and I'm going in the wrong direction to show you that. But anyways, I have like baby bamboo. I've got the, I think they're wandering Jews. I think they are like the, one of my favorites. I love the colors. When they start coming out, they have some purple tinge to them eventually. These cactuses are about the only cactus I have left since my childhood. I used to have a ton of cactuses, probably close to 100 around our whole entire house. I had them growing in trays. I had them growing in the corners in our dining room. I had them growing in our spare bedroom, in our my parents' bedroom, in my room. I had them everywhere. Like, I mean, everywhere. And those are the only ones my mom has ever kept that stayed alive. And I think that was one of my first ones. Um, so there is all my plants. Not all my plants, but some over there. I do believe in, taking care of plants. Anyways, I'll show you the whole bonsai. Yes, right there. He's a big guy. It's a big bonsai. I don't know if I can get into him. Very good. There he is. Big bonsai anyway. And so anyways, and there is my baby bonsai. So you can see that really clear. And he's kind of weird and I don't know, kind of bushy. But it was the first one I've ever transplanted. I don't even know if I did it right. I have no idea whether I don't know how it will grow, but now it's starting to make a stem on it. So I'm assuming I'm doing okay with it. I really have no idea. So I'm just kind of going with my own instincts on that. I believe in plants because they kind of keep you going throughout the time every day. And there's always something new with them or a new type of growth. And I've been taught that if you can take care of a plant, you can take care of yourself kind of thing, concept. So it's kind of my motto to step forward. Today has been really busy for us. Like I said, we've been moving things from upstairs, it's downstairs to different levels. And it's just been a lot of shifting, a lot of moving things around and replanning and revamping. And it's taken us a long time to get to a point where we can both agree on what we both can do, or support each other on. And it was a long go on this. And I said, well, before I started YouTube a long time ago, before in 2008, I believe, and just when I lost my channel, I couldn't get back into it and just kind of gave up on it. And I've restarted it again. And I would like to show Enna's progress. It's 14 years later. I would like to show how our family is doing. And I mean, besides our mental health and, when we don't look very decent or, you're running all day long and it is what it is. We are who we are as individuals. And we support each other best we can through both our situations. So complex PTSD, a lot of people will say, oh, well, isn't that something that somebody from the military goes through? Or isn't that something that is only for, basically for military people? A military diagnosis. I don't know how many times I hear that throughout my lifetime. Well, isn't it just a military diagnosis? Okay, well, let me explain that. Unfortunately, there are people like me who suffered through traumas as a child, severe traumas, and those traumas have become nightmares, and you eventually shut down because you wonder why nobody supports you on what's going on through these situations, why you keep going back into the house or situations, or you get removed, but the problem in the home doesn't get removed and be, treated as they need to be. So, people with addictions, and eventually I can get into that because I have lived through that scenario in my life where my mom, was heavily VLT, gambling addictive. My stepdad became an alcoholic through the stress of one addiction. He was socially drinking. Yes, he drank quite a bit before, but became a heavy drinker. And as it progressed, it was like both their addictions progressed, and it was really hard on both our dynamics of living, all our dynamics of living. So anyways, that now has led to a lot of trauma for me. So I've been diagnosed with PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress and disorder, in 2008. So 2008, I was diagnosed with that. I went and started group therapy. It wasn't the therapy for me. I felt I was at a place that I couldn't relate to people who could relate to me. you know, they're crying about things, and I'm felt like my problems I didn't even want to talk about, because if I started talking to them about them, then I would be making group therapy even worse than what they're dealing with. And yes, I know my pine has green paint on it and kind of weird paint. My daughter had painted it when she was younger, and we just never refinished it, which will be a DIY later on. So it is a project that we're looking to do. So anyways, we'll explain. It's been so much that we've gone through, you know, just myself alone. I've had to go through a history of my own mental health, and Hugo didn't know what depression was really. He understood it, but he didn't understand it. He understood it to an extent because he was kind of alone, lost his mom at a young age. His dad wasn't there. So the abandonment and stuff like that for him, but he was like, okay, Lisa, you just gotta keep going, Liz, come on. And, you know, and he was like, well, we'll just deal with it and stuff. And I tried to explain to him that my mom also can really be a big factor into a lot of stressful dynamics. And then it just goes on. And plus then all of a sudden we end up with a daughter diagnosed. I mean, he loves his kids, and he had 3 kids previous relationship. And then all of a sudden we have this first child together, this new relationship. And our daughter is diagnosed with a terminal illness. That was the biggest blow, to be like, are you serious? My daughter is smiling at me. She's happy. She's alert. She's functioning. And then you start looking at everything that you start explaining to you, a little bit of a narrowing in her chest and a little bit struggling to breathe and the floppy tone. And I cried. I don't know how many nights I cried staying up and looking at everything and reading and just thinking, God, there's got to be something that, you know, can change. There's got to be something. Like, I mean, it just doesn't sound right that in today's society or world that we are not further advanced in our knowledge than this. So then I started to find out that we stayed on a cancer ward, or not a cancer ward. We were on a cancer ward for temporary. And then we were on a heart ward for quite a while. And the heart ward had all these advanced, you know, technologies and everything they need, shampoo and all this stuff. And we get transferred to a genetic ward, or not even, it was respiratory ward. The respiratory ward is considered genetics, and genetic apparently doesn't have a whole lot of funding, which surprised me considering that there are a lot of genetics that can like connect to heart conditions or respiratory issues or so on and so forth, that we could actually be educating ourselves from, and that we don't really get that education if we're not actually getting to the root of the problem. Same thing as mental health. Let's remove the children from the home, but let's not remove the parent from the home who needs the assistance of help, who's causing these problems. Even if there's acknowledgement and enough evidence to, you know, you basically have to be in critical condition before somebody can help you or will help you when you are a child. And I can tell you that for a fact, because I don't know, I think it was about after they put me back in our home when I was 12, you know, and what I went through in my own foster home that we were placed, it was like, I remember getting on the bus and even asking my sister, why is she even hugging us? Like, she didn't even like us. She hated us. And I felt that way. I felt like she just hated us. I could never talk to my sister. We were isolated from each other. We just went through something traumatic, and here we're now isolated. And we can't talk to each other. We can't go near each other. I have to be locked up in a room with a dog. It was a nightmare. Anyways, I still like dogs. And so then by the time I arrived to Calgary, my clothes are stained from dog urine because I was in the room with this dog, and my socks were stained yellow, all of them. And my aunt was so disgusted with me and just looked at me like I was like just this awful, disgusting child. And I remember that, and there was nothing I could do. I was in the foster home. That's what it was. It was what it was. And so anyways, it's not that they were horrible, horrible people, but they weren't there for the initial care. That's it. You know, oh, I got a kid that came through my home. Oh, look, I took care of a kid. When you are 11 years old and asking your sister why someone's hugging you because they don't like you, there is a problem. And the social worker was right there. And nothing was acknowledged. anyways, I'm going to get into all of that stuff later on. It's a lot of what my PTSD has to deal with, and they're symptoms and stuff that I never realized. I just felt like as my symptoms progressed, I wasn't getting the right therapy for one, as a child who went through so many traumatic events. I also wasn't having the right support because people are like more focused on other things and stuff, and they don't realize that, you know, what you are going through, and that it is a very serious situation to your mental health on top of everything. I'm trying, hopefully I'm sure there are people that will be able to relate to this, because, excuse me, there's a lot of people. I think when I get stressed, I get really, you know, I don't know, anxieties. This isn't easy for me to just step out and be like, hey guys, I have a daughter who was diagnosed with a terminal illness, spinal muscular atrophy, a son with Williams syndrome and hydrocephalus, who also had a pulmonary stenosis due to his Williams syndrome, and ended up dying from a viral pneumonia that attacked his heart on Father's Day. And then I went through losing my father 4 years later, who actually, I thought it was 2, but it was just the trauma of the events. But it's actually 4 years later in my hands. And, you know, both Hugo and I were taking care of him, and my mom too sometimes. But that's another story. And then I get hit with this thyroid cancer. I get hit with a brain bleed, a rare brain bleed that normally kills people. And you're thinking, what the heck anymore? And then people turn around and say, you know what, you got to get your shit together. Pardon my language, but yeah, I've done that. I've been trying. Holy man, I've literally been hit by a truckload, and then all my childhood traumas. And people just like, oh, you're this or that. And everybody wants to have a label for you. Everybody judges what your diagnosis is. That is one thing. Oh my gosh. I spent, I don't know how many years of my life going to therapy, asking a therapist if I was bipolar, because my sister and my mom were trying. My sister, I think, was the one that had my mom convinced that I was bipolar. And it was a nightmare. So then my mom was convinced I was bipolar. So then I've got these 2 people saying that I'm bipolar. I need to be treated for bipolar. They're not doctors. I keep having therapists telling me I'm not bipolar, and I keep telling them, what am I then? Because obviously I'm not normal. People say there's something wrong with me. And if there's something wrong with me, obviously it's visible, and I don't know what's going on anymore. So it took until Enna was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy. That'll be a long story that I'll get into eventually. Again, of how I ended up with meeting with 3 psychiatrists when Enna was admitted in hospital and diagnosed. And then I was sitting beside her and scrapbooking, and all of a sudden a social worker and 2 security guards show up and said that I have to come down with them or I'll be escorted down kindly. So I went with them, and they said that, well, I basically was making a suicide attempt and all this stuff. And I'm like, what? Like, I just was scrapbooking beside my daughter. Now, leaving my daughter's side at this time was really risky, because I monitored everything, her suctioning, her, all that stuff, that things that nurses and people don't want to make time for. And I did. And, you know, because it's important for spinal muscular atrophy patients and stuff. So I knew that I needed to try to be, in my sense of way, proactive for the care that was acknowledged and out there for children with spinal muscular atrophy. And anyways, it was risky to go, but I left with them kindly, and they took me down, took all my stuff, my clothes, all that stuff, and they locked all my stuff up and then put me in a cell. And I was in this little cell. I'm claustrophobic as well, with this little tiny window and a guard in front of my window, and pacing back and forth. And then they're asking me what's wrong, and I'm like, I can't breathe, I'm in here. And I'm like, you know, and there's just a tiny window, and I can't look at anything, I can't see nothing, and I feel like I'm so isolated. So they opened the door. The guard wasn't too impressed, and then I started getting evaluated by the three psychiatrists in 2008. I can't remember exactly which month it was. It was probably in June, maybe, or May. No, it would have been August, maybe August, September. Yeah, so probably about August this happened to me. So I'm in this pink cell, and it was pink with this little green rubber strip around the floor and a stretcher in there and camera up in the corner. So the three psychiatrists do my evaluation to only be able to diagnose me with the fact that I had PTSD, which I never heard of before. I'm angry at the hospital. I'm so frustrated, so angry that they put me in here and just made me sit there in this room, and everybody, you're feeling like everybody's against you. But in all reality, in that whole event of, I would say it was cruel in a sense, but in all that reality, I actually came out with a diagnosis for a change, something I had never heard of. So in 2008, I had no clue what post-traumatic stress syndrome was. I had no clue what it was. That was something difficult to explain to Hugo as well, to say, he's like, oh, come on, let's go here. And I just hesitate. I'd bolt. My clothes would get soaked in sweat. I couldn't go into markets. I couldn't go into people. It didn't matter. My clothes would be, my whole back would be dripping, everything. I would just be like, I can't go around people. I can't. I would just be my anxiety, like people come around me. If they touch my shoulder, I'll react. And my reaction is not very good when people come up and grab me off guard behind or honk a horn behind me. It's horrible. It's a hard thing to live with. Your heart tenses, your blood pressure goes up. You don't even understand what you're doing anymore. That's it. You're just done. You're like, okay, you'll either react or you'll cry or whatever. I don't know. And for myself, with the whole post-traumatic stress, I find I isolate myself, and I try to get outside, and it's like somebody put this wall that you just keep going room into, and you can't get out. And you try, but you're just like, okay, it's a struggle. The depression. So then we throw that on top of it. The depression itself has been a very big struggle in my life. It started when I was very young. I think probably when I was 9. So I'm starting to go back through all of my traumas. I'm going through a lot of treatment now, and a lot of triggers and events and things have really triggered me. Which have, I don't know, I think it was also explained this too, is that the age range I'm at. The age is my flashback range. So everything is coming back to me in flashbacks of my past that I have not dealt with, things that so I'm learning everything from where I lost, where one of my first trusts really hurt, where my anger and frustrations come from. I had been bullied before, and people probably would never believe this. I went to a Catholic school, and in that Catholic school, same thing. I was young. They bullied me. They would sit there, and my mom cut my hair so short because I would get into everything. Like, I'd go outside, I'd play guitar, I was a kid. I was outdoors all the time, and you couldn't stop me. So she cut my hair because she didn't know what to do with my hair anymore. And I looked like a boy. So everybody was like, oh yeah, and calling me a boy. And the way I dressed, my clothes, I got picked on like religiously. And then the boys didn't like me playing soccer with them. So they would literally go in a circle and start beating me up. And there was like 2 or 3 guys that constantly stood up for me. And, they understood that this wasn't right. And I literally had a girl that would literally, I think she was like 3 grades or 2 grades higher than I was, and beat me up like almost every lunch hour. Nothing I could almost do about it. But I started learning where a lot of my complexes were. Those girls sitting behind the tires calling me all these names and thinking they were cool, and oh my gosh, I'm going to call you all these names, and and then hide behind the tire, and you guys suck, by the way. And yeah, my life ain't great. It ain't perfect, and I'm not fancy or this or that. But I didn't have to put someone down behind a tire, that's for sure, to feel superior in my lifetime. And anyways, I eventually ended up switching schools. it started becoming too much for my sister. It started becoming too much for myself. The ignorance and the bullying in a Catholic school, and that's the sad thing, was horrible for myself. And we switched schools, and I promised myself I'm not going to go through that again. So I didn't talk to any of the kids at first. And when we switched schools, it was like grade 3 when I switched schools, and kind of kept to myself. And finally somebody approached me one day, and then slowly another friend approached me one day, and that best friend was like, my best friend for a long time. I had a couple best friends, so I have more than one best friend, I guess you would say, out of females. I had a lot of, I couldn't even say, like 2 really close best friends. And that was, what it was in life. And we ended up developing kind of a little group of people that clicked together, that were outsiders of things, and didn't fit in with this but didn't fit in with that, and it didn't matter to us. We just supported each other through it. And it, some of us got along, some of us didn't. Sometimes I was super nasty, sometimes somebody was super nasty to me. It was the way it was. We just did the best we could growing up, and we all had problems. So my depression started probably around 9. And probably just before that, when the bullying started, my grandfather also passed away. And he was my absolute idol. He was like a father role figure for me at this point. I guess I had my stepfather. But my grandfather, I don't know, he had that connection to me that, you look up at him and you're complete, and you can feel the peace inside him and his soul. And he'd look at you so proud. He would teach you these little things. Like, he would just poke a little hole in a cardboard, and then he would cut a circle around it, and he put a string through it, and then you'd pull the ends of each part of the string, and then this little circle would just spin around, and keep busy for hours doing stuff like this. And just simple things. He would make his own, I don't know, he would, I don't know what you call that, smoke your own meat, I guess. He would smoke his own meat with his own handmade barrels, and, and you could see his hands were hardworking and all this stuff. He was a very hardworking man, but a very peaceful man, a very, very peaceful man, probably the most peaceful man I've ever met in my life. I don't know how he found his sense of peace, but he did. And when you go near his room, and if he was meditating or praying or whatever, it was amazing. It was quiet. You could just feel it as you're going down the hall. I don't know how to explain it. And so anyways, for myself, I decided to become more of a spiritual person. I decided that I didn't like the diversities anymore. I didn't like the feeling that people feel like you have to be committed to this church or to that church. And we all believe in a God at some point, and we all pray, we all meditate, throughout the world, we all have all these religions, but yet when you sum it all up, it's all the same thing: prayer, meditation, energy, being there, kindness, all that stuff. It's all round up to a higher power we all believe in. So I'm like, why do I have to believe in all these higher powers if there's one higher power we should just be believing in? And why should I diverse myself from this family member or from that friend? And why do I have to convert to your church if I just want to go and attend and just be there, but not have to convert myself, because I believe in my spiritualism too? So why, if I want to educate and learn myself and be there at this church, why do I have to feel pressure to convert? Why do I have to feel pressure to be a part of that group? I wonder where socialism starts. Where does the diversities of teaching start? In groups. Why can't we just believe in one higher power? All have an hour of prayer or whatever throughout our time and say, look, there is one higher power. Why is there all these wars over religion and things like that? And I mean, this is where a lot of my PTSD and anxiety comes through. You're just like thinking, we have wars over religion. People literally toss their family members out because of a religion. Good people. It's weird. Why? So anyways, even though, I've seen how spiritual my grandfather was, I shook the Pope's hand. He took me to a church where the Pope was, and we shook his hand. And I met the Pope years and years ago. It was in the 80s somewhere, when I was very little. All I remember was the glass dome, shaking his hand and looking at my grandfather smile and him talking, and that was about it. And I don't even know how young I was. I don't even know when the Pope even came in the 80s, but I completely had forgot about that. And I had learned that through therapy as well, that oh my God, this trigger, this flashback came, and I was like, Mom, did this really happen? And yeah, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So it was a flashback that I've forgotten, that I remembered over the past couple of years, or it was like last year that I remembered this. Um, I've had some events where a lot of trauma started triggering me, and put me through a great deal of, how do I say, these events that were not the greatest events put me into a massive flashback. Like, I mean, it was just everything was feeding into my head. Things I never dealt with, things I've never dealt with since I was like probably 9, 12, whatever. It doesn't matter. They just started flooding in, and it was so overwhelming. And it was just like, I could not deal with everything flooding into my head the way it was, all the traumas coming at me. And I felt suffocated. I felt like I was isolated. And the reason why I'm explaining all of this stuff, because I want to be able to be someone with mental health, to be able to say, like, this is a journey that you can follow, that you can understand, and perhaps it'll help you understand someone else who's going through what I go through. I don't know. Sometimes people just can never get the depths of what someone who goes through depression and things like that, or anxieties, or PTSD, or whatever, so be it. They don't try to understand how hard it is for that person going through that situation, what it's like for them. And everybody will have a label for them. Everybody has a label for me, trust me. I mean, from nasty to bipolar to split personality, you name it. And if people actually understood what PTSD is, or complex PTSD, they would begin to see that complex PTSD is a sense of, somebody who could be like ADHD one minute and then could be bipolar the next minute, could be, like your whole anxieties and everything just revamp all over the place. You're like a ping pong, from emotion to emotion to emotion to emotion. Your anxiety goes from one level to the next. And it's so hard for me to control my anxiety right now. It's like, Lisa, breathe. Okay. So let it all out. I get so much judgment on my critical thinking, or critical this, and nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to do this, or but nobody wants to stop and pause for a second and say, okay, I need a solution for this. This is really, I can't hear this no more. So what the heck do I do? And even myself, sometimes I look at people and I'm analyzing them, and I'm like, what can I do for their situation? And that's what I kind of start doing. And I stop and pause, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I've lost enough people to understand that we isolate ourselves. That people with PTSD, suicidal thoughts, we isolate ourselves to a point that we just wither away. And then to a point where then all of a sudden the whole world gets this phone call, and everybody's shocked, and everybody's hurt, and everybody's wishing that there was something that they could do, or could have done, or should have done, or saw the signs of. And it's very difficult when you're at that point, or at that level. And it's very dark, it's very deep, and it's a hard place to be. And the one question I will put out there, or question to be probably, is Enna's diagnosis my part of the problem of my PTSD? And that is no. Yeah, a little bit of part of the problem. When you get told that your daughter has a terminal diagnosis and she's just starting her life, and looking at you with a smile already at, like 3 months old or whatever, you're like, you're not going to take that lightly as a mom, especially when you look at this beautiful baby, this beautiful child, and that's all you can see is the warmth and their glow. And they are called SMA angels for a reason, I believe, because I thought it was just my daughter. And I kept looking at her like, oh my gosh, it's like, it's like, someone sent us an angel here. Like, she's just like that angel. You can feel the sense of peace. It's I don't even know how to explain it. Their eyes sparkle, their smile, and their love for life is there. And it's what made me start becoming that strong advocate, was holding Enna And I was looking at her, and the doctors kept telling me, let her go, take lots of pictures, enjoy, the next couple months, or maybe a month or a couple weeks or whatever you have left. And I'm thinking, God, I just had her, So you're thinking, I just had this beautiful baby girl, and it's just me and her and my son, and this mom who is like, I'll be right back. And, oh, do you have any money? And goes to a gambling machine. And you ask, can somebody help me support this situation so that it's not going to go unnoticed or uneducated? That there will be education, there will be support, there will be that point you can get to in life. A lot of people say, I would never live that way. Christopher Reeves, Superman himself, on, the actor, you take that for an example, has his accident with a horse. Great show, he's Superman. I mean, everybody saw him as Superman. And he became that man. And Hugo has a big Superman tattoo on his back. He became that man, that idol, because he didn't give up on his fight. He didn't give up on the knowledge that we can medically do something about spinal injuries or spinal issues. Then you take Stephen Hawkins, who became a great part of this world, great success in this world. And I mean, he made so much in this world advance. It's phenomenal. So can you imagine what his contribution and his purpose was in this lifetime? Was just outstanding. So the judgment to say that my daughter wouldn't have purpose is not fair, because that's not for me to choose. I got to this level where I felt like I was dealing with the struggle inside my stomach. God, and I just kept saying, God, just guide me what I'm supposed to do. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. And I was at a point where I was ready to start giving up. And then all of a sudden somebody come and sit down and talk to me and says, look, I know this mom, and slip me this phone number. And I was like, oh, and I mean, I was ready to give up, and I was just accepting that this was fate. It was what it was. And so I called this phone number. It was another mom. I spoke with this mom for a while, and I would say, yes, this mom is a lifesaver to our family, or to my daughter's life. She was able to educate us on what we can do, connect us with other families, and give me the guidance and the education that I knew was out there. And I was able to receive that. So then we were able to advocate for our daughter. We were able to become proactive in her life. And she is currently 14 years old. Yes, she is about 62 pounds, 63 pounds. And yes, she is 14 pounds. That's 14 years from lack of the muscle, though. But muscle is starting to develop, as you can see in the video. It looks like a little heartbeat. It's so cool to see that there was a muscle developing, and that she's actually a part of something that we were told she would never see happen. So she is a part of that history. She was actually one of the first children to be, actually she was the first child at the Stollery Hospital here to receive the spinal treatment, Speranza. And then we did have to drive to Calgary, which is 2.5 hours before that, because they didn't want to do the treatment and they were refusing to do it. So we had to drive to Calgary, where they were wanting to do this for our children, and knew the struggles of our parents and what we go through. And so I had another mom reach out to me and said, like, look, this is for Enna, blah, blah, blah. Or not for just Enna, right? You know what I mean? There's an opportunity for her. So I took the opportunity. I got a hold of everybody that I needed to quickly, and we got on to there. At the same time, in your mind, you're thinking, oh my God, all these people. In your heart, when you've already seen so many people lose their child already, your heart's just crumbling at the same time, because we all wait for this as parents. We're all wanting this opportunity for each other, for our children, for the future children, which has been actually happening. They are walking, eating, standing, things like that. So when you can start treating it while it's earlier onset, they have a greater opportunity. To the day that I walked into the door and they told me that I had to hold my daughter and that she maybe last 7 months. So we go from that. Hugo was never a smoker. This is another thing. He was never a smoker, but when he was told about the diagnosis of a spinal muscular atrophy, he didn't quite get everything. It was so overwhelming. Everything was coming at him so fast. He was just like, what do you mean my daughter's got this terminal diagnosis? And he started smoking. He just, all of a sudden, there was somebody standing beside him. He grabbed the cigarette and he started smoking. He didn't know what to do. It was a devastating diagnosis for anybody to be like, what do you mean this is happening to my child? And you're thinking, that's not what you're ever going to think. You think, you're going to have a baby. You're going to, have this future, camping. You're going to pick out all the little dresses and do family photos. And, no, I did research. Lots and lots and lots of research. Lots of research. I stayed up endless nights, endless days. Whenever she napped, I did research her nonstop. Everything that I possibly could to educate myself as fast as I could so that I could work and advocate for this. And I knew in my heart that was part of my, I can't even tell you and explain. People will say stuff to me and be like, well, and whatever. I had a son who passed away on Father's Day who was on an ECMO machine for 4 days after he had a cardiac arrest for over 20 minutes that I had stood there and watched happen. I watched him go from this crying, beautiful baby. And I just watched everything go timeless. The clock was, I kept watching the time, and after 10 minutes went by, I knew this was critical. And then they rushed him past me into PICU, surgery. They took him into surgery right away, and they hooked him up to an ECMO machine, and the risks of the ECMO machine is blood clots. So he started doing really well. He was starting to respond to us. He was interacting. And they said the next day they would wean him off, which means that they would start taking him off because he was doing good, and see how he starts breathing on his own and responding and stuff like that. So that was the plan for the next day, and it was Father's Day. The next day, Hugo's smiling, everything is good, and I stayed with Caleb. Something told me to stay with him as long as I could, and I think I was there. Our daughter, Enna, was also admitted in an installatory overnight. Or not overnight, but for respite while, we could run back and forth and take care of both kids. And so I left, I think it was almost 2 a.m, 1:32 in the morning, and I went upstairs and slept in the cot beside my daughter, and then it was 6 a.m. I got a phone call. A nurse actually tapped my shoulder very gently and kind of alerted me, saying that, your son's pupils aren't dilating, and I knew exactly what that meant at that moment. And so I took the phone call. It was 6 a.m. and they told me that his pupils weren't dilating and explained everything else, and I knew what it meant, that he's declared brain dead at this point. So at 6:30, after I took it all in, I finally called Hugo and I gave him the information, and he started making his way to the hospital. We all started discussing what to do. And we asked, can we have one more day with him? And his whole brain activity was white, or like it looks white, but they call it a blackout. So there was no brain activity there left anymore, pretty much. So we asked if we could just wait one more day to take him off so that we could just get through Father's Day with him. And we did our first Father's Day. Sorry. So anyways, sorry about that. But anyways, we spent our first and our last Father's Day with him. And it was very difficult. It was very hard to get through. You feel like this big sack of potatoes who's growing roots everywhere. And that's all you're ever going to do now. Because you're so heavy inside, and all the weight inside of you is heavy. I didn't even fully recover. My body didn't even fully recover from afterbirth yet. He was only 3 months old and still had this birthing body, and that I was still slowly recovering from, I guess. I don't know. My body's not very, I don't have a fast metabolism or strong metabolism at all due to the thyroid disease, and very slow metabolism, which is probably not a bad thing in some sense. Anyways, we processed through that, and we got in a home and things like that, and got through the funeral, and we got through other situations, and eventually Hugo had to start working out of town, and we started doing that, and so he'd be gone 5 hours, or from home, 5-hour drive away from home, so he'd be gone for sometimes 21 days, sometimes 14 days, sometimes it would be 7 on, 7 off, whatever, I don't know. So it would be variety, and I'd be at home with the kids myself, taking care of them, and yes, he called daily, all that stuff, check up on me and all the depression. And I know some moms can relate to, the medical process of the grieving process, even just being a medical parent and just hearing those words. It's a grieving process. So you're grieving more than once, and you're going to grieve again. It's one way or another, and it's your worst nightmare. So I started saying, you know what, we wanted to do YouTube and vlogging for a long time, or start documenting our history with our family, our mental health, our struggles, and also our good moments. And there will be good moments out there. There is good moments. They're not all horrible. The world in my mind crumbles and falls like on a regular basis, but there are good moments in this world, and I'm just waiting to get there in my lifetime. I'm just climbing there and just looking to see that step again, and see that I can actually look around the corner and go, okay, I can take a breather. I can be okay with this. I can be okay with that. And those kinds of scenarios. So when you go through
the shadow to my light, did you feel us? Another star, you fade away. Afraid our aim is out of sight. Wanna see us alive.